Hey friends, this is Chris. Welcome back. So I want to have a chat with you about the markets, about the Fed, and what's going to be happening this coming next week. So the Fed is scheduled to meet, and basically the bet on the street is that they're going to cut interest rates by either 25 basis points or 50 basis points, right? So that's coming this week. They could hold, but no one's talking about that. And I'll just tell you, like, I'm fine with them holding, but the market's like really wants a cut. So again, the bet is 50% chance, essentially 50-50. Is it going to be a 25 or 50 basis point cut? The challenge for the Fed, and I just want to explain these things to you guys, is like you're looking at three different things. So one is, what is GDP growth? Like, what are we expecting the economy to do, et cetera? Maybe around 2%, something like that. That's sort of the expectations. Where's inflation going to be? Is it going to come down? And it's actually interesting because the Fed, they want it to come down to about 2%. Projections, it may be around that, maybe a little bit more. It won't be less. I don't think it's gonna be less than 2%, maybe 2.5, maybe 3. It's hard to predict that far in the future, but that's sort of what we're looking at. So growth around 2, inflation, around 2, well, above 2. And then we're also looking at unemployment. At the moment, I think it's in the 4s, and will that increase or not? So this is what the Fed's thinking about. And one of the challenges going forward this week for the Fed, if they cut that 50 basis point, and that's essentially what many on Wall Street are clamoring to do, is how will Federal Chair Jerome Powell, how will he announce the news? That's what you're going to want to be looking for. So the one is how much the cut's going to be, and then what's the news going to be and why you're doing said action. If they come out and they say, hey, it's a 50 basis point rate cut, essentially at that point the Fed's got to go, or Powell's got to be like, yo, we're doing the 50, but we're not worried. Everything is fine. And that's essentially, he's got a calmer way down. So say, Chris, what do you mean? Isn't cut supposed to be good news? That's what everybody wants, et cetera. Well, it depends how it's delivered. So if he comes out and he gives a 50 basis rate cut and he's like, the language sounds like, guys, we're worried about growth. Guys, we're worried that like unemployment's going to go through the roof. Like, that may really spook the market. Do you guys see what I'm saying? So he's got to be careful on how he proceeds this week. Why do we care about this kind of stuff? So I understand that if you flip on YouTube, et cetera, guys, I understand, I try to explain it, is that many channels out there just show you a chart and you just think of sort of stocks as being like crypto, basically, right? It's as long as the chart, and I draw an arrow that it goes up, then it must go up and you all get rich, right? That's sort of how a lot of people think about this stuff. But, myself, I like to look at like, what's an individual company doing? What are they saying? Like, what's the economy up to, et cetera. I like to give a full picture of what's going on other than just chart. In a world of free money, yes, everything just goes up because we all got money and we're all throwing it in the market. But, we're in a different scenario right now, where like China's melting down and you see a lot of people are struggling. Is the money there, and are they going to be throwing it all into the market? So that's why I like to bring it back to reality and talk about like what's going on with companies. So, for example, okay, so remember the rates are going to come down and some people will be cheering, et cetera, but it depends how Powell delivers the news. Can you say we're cutting because everything's fine, or are we cutting because, man, we're worried that everything's going to fall apart, be economy, jobs, et cetera? Is what are our individual companies doing, and what are individual industries doing? And this is where I ask for your help, because guys, every day I do this channel, I love spending time with you, and I like hearing from the community. The question I pose to you is, at your job, in your industry, are the orders still coming in? Are the orders increasing, same, or decreasing compared to last year? And I want to hear from you guys. I like to hear this kind of stuff. Also, at your company or the industry that you're in, are they firing? Are they holding steady, or are they hiring, right? So those kind of things right there. And I just want you to kind of think about this in terms of like a managerial aspect. Pull yourself out from wherever you are and just kind of go up to a higher level, pull back and like get a broader picture of your industry slash job and those kind of things. And you guys will know. You will know depending on it. And it's just like if you're in software, if you're in hotel, if you're industry, if you're shipping, whatever industry you're in, you're going to know. You're going to know if you have more orders. You're going to know if you're hiring. You're going to know if there's talk around the office of layoffs. You're going to know all these things, right? And I'd like to hear from you guys, because these kind of things, what you hear and know on the ground, kind of is like capturing a more snapshot of what may be happening as an entire economy, et cetera. That's why we talk about all this together. I think one of the things these days too, which isn't, and I don't think Federal Chair Jerome Powell's ever mentioned, and you guys can let me know, I'm just trying to think if he ever has, like the amount of Americans that have 2 jobs or the amount of Americans that are on gig jobs. which I think hides a lot of the numbers or hides how many people are struggling, or the amount of Americans that say had to move home with the parents because things are too expensive. My personal thing when I and I don't know, I want to hear from you guys, but when I kind of just get the milieu of what's happening when I go to individual on the kind of, I can say, retail level or Main Street level is how we like to say, I feel like people are struggling, and I kind of question some of the things that I see in the market. I understand that your Nvidia is going up and it's awesome forever, et cetera. And this is sort of why I say and think it's a bubble, is because it doesn't quite match what I feel like regular people's experiences are. But hey, I could be wrong. Maybe everyone out there is like doing awesome, and maybe your industry is like hiring like nuts. Maybe, I don't know. That's why I want to hear from you. Because for me, because I try to show you guys news all the time, when I see, like, say for example, Microsoft Xbox was firing, that was recently, or I see Price Waterhouse, right, PwC is laying off, or I see, for example, there's a meltdown in China. The economy, like, they just arrested a bunch of bankers. We talked about this, and they're telling people not to leave. They're telling bankers to, like, give their passports. It's like they're really cracking down over there. And I know sometimes they say, oh, that's just fun and stuff like that, but it's just like, not necessarily, guys. It's just the news. It just is what it is. Like, for example, if I see, and we're talking about Boeing, talking about in the last video, if I see people at Boeing are going on strike, they're on strike right now. I mean, obviously that tells you that there's a bunch of workers that feel like they're not getting paid enough. They're not getting enough to make ends meet. Or I see that people over American Airlines, they were threatening to strike, but they end up getting a pay raise. I can see people are struggling, that kind of stuff. How does this relate to the market? Well, if I'm a company, we always use Tesla example because it's an easy example. I have to sell products to a consumer, and consumers have to want to buy my product, and that's how I make money. And then I report my earnings and all the money that I make, and I report that on Wall Street, and people decide if my company's worth anything or not, right? Depending on how many profits that I make. I know Tesla's an unusual one, but not so unusual, because it happens a lot on Wall Street, to where a company becomes basically a stock selling company where, well, our numbers aren't that great. We're not selling that many cars. We're not making that much money. But hey, think about next year. We're going to have like this awesome new products and stuff like that, right? And it becomes like not about numbers anymore, but about, hopes and dreams. And that's where you got to essentially, as an investor, question these kind of things, right? And this is sort of like, you'll know your industry, like how are consumers feeling? Because remember, we're a consumer economy in the modern world. You can talk about the USA, but it's really everywhere, guys. We're a consumer economy. Like, companies depend on people to show up and buy their products. The warning signs for me, and sort of why I feel cautious in this market, like when I see Teslas is piling up on parking lots, right? Or I see Apple, and they have their big announcement, and it's like not really a big announcement because there's nothing really there. I made a video on that. It was like they got this new AI stuff that may or may not be ready sometime soon. That was real. They called it Apple Intelligence, and it was like, is that all you got? It's like, and then the new phone's coming out, and it's got a couple new features. I think it's got like a zoom feature, and it's got a microphone that works a little bit better, and maybe a camera that looks a little bit better. But like, I don't need to spend $1,000 on another phone. I'm fine with my phone now, and like this kind of stuff. And again, this would be something that you watch, and sort of why and sort of how we share information with each other. For example, let's say iPhone has their launch, just for example, and we find out that like they just got orders through the roof, and people are lining outside the store, and Tim Cook is like going, yeah, we're selling lots and lots of iPhones, and you're like, okay, people got money. I can see that. But if it's like not like that, right? What if it's the opposite? Like they release a new product, like say the Vision Pro thing, the goggle thing, and like they spend all this R&D and no one buys said thing, and just like, okay, great. How are you going to make any money over there, Apple, right? Do you guys see what I'm saying? Like you try to know the market, and it's like, I'd love to have this conversation with you. Again, you're looking at growth, right? And that reflects the overall, are we buying stuff or not? Are we selling stuff or not? Are we trading stuff or not, right? You're looking at employment. Do people have jobs to do all these things, to buy all this stuff, do all this stuff? Inflation, right? How is that weighing on consumers? Do they have the extra, discretionary income to buy said products? The other thing too, which obviously you guys know this, we talk about, it's an election year. And there's a bit of uncertainty, like, okay, we get someone new. Well, actually, they're both going to be new because Biden's leaving. But and you could argue whether or not Harris is the same as Biden. That's a different argument. But it's going to be a different president than we have now. we get someone new and like, what are their policies going to be? They're going to do anything crazy. It's going to freak out the market. And what you'll find in this market, the world that we live in, it's all based on trust. It's all based on faith in the system, right? So for example, in your particular situation, that's why I asked you about your job situation or your industry. If you're confident, you know, like I go to work every day, I see the orders coming in, I see the orders are going to be, you know, till the next 3 years, like we got these great contracts, and some companies do, right? You get these great government contracts, whatever, and you're like, we're totally set, we're fine. So I feel comfortable going out and buying said new car, going out and you know, upgrading my house or whatever, right? And you're going to know your individual situation, and kind of the way that we track this stuff with consumer sentiment. We think of it like, how's everyone as a whole feel? You know, my feelings is, and well, not just feelings, there's feelings, and then there's also like data. Data says consumer sentiment has been ticking up a bit lately, but we're still lower than we were before. So there's that, and I still think there's just a lot of people out there struggling. So, you know, I'm trying to piece this stuff together myself. I remain cautious on this market. Historically speaking, a lot of our stocks are overvalued. It doesn't mean that you completely uninvest in stuff, but it just means you're more cautious. So, you know, hey, if I can get a guaranteed returns on bonds or CDs, I'm going with some of that. Hey, I'm not going to completely leave the market. I'm going with some of that. And you just do the risk allocation that makes sense for you. You know, the way that things are looking out now, like if I had to guess, I think jobs is a very, very real concern. That's why I mentioned every time on this channel, you know, when I see people striking or I see companies laying off, I'm just like, I hope my viewers are doing all right out there, because I think that is obviously very, very important. Or, you know, when we're talking about, say, because I know there's a lot of older people out there that are watching, there's a new projection that just came out. I think Social Security, for those of you who are older watching this, I think it's going to go up about 2.5% next year. That's the bet. They based that on what inflation's around, so that's probably what it'll be. And the question, you know, would be, is that enough to keep up with your living expenses where you are? Because even though you'll hear things that were like, inflation's coming down, your sort of gains, it'd be your wages or Social Security or whatever, may not necessarily have kept up with inflation. So, you know, there's a lot of people still kind of trying to worried about that. And I think probably the most biggest concern, and we'll keep talking about this over and over again, is housing costs. Until people feel like that they can be in a place to where, you know, it's under that 30%, which a lot of people like to say, you know, keep your housing costs basically under 30% of your monthly, then you're going to be okay. But for some people, they're like spending 50% of their monthly, you know, income on housing. It's just like too much. Or, you know, again, I mentioned the thing before, people are moving back home because they can't afford it. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about with the market. Just wanted to share some things with you. Sometimes I just want to get something off my chest. And we're going to look at not only what federal Jerome Powell does in terms of cuts, and well, not just him, but the committee, but how they say it, how they deliver the news, and are people have faith in the system or not. So I want to hear from you. Do you have faith going into next week? How are you feeling about your industry? Always love hearing your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time.